The arena fell silent as the beast roared, until the human tossed it a snack. The Colosseum of Vex Prime could hold 300,000 spectators, and every single seat was occupied. Representatives from 47 different species filled the massive amphitheater, their various forms of excited chatter creating a cacophony that the universal translators struggled to parse. Today was special. Today they would witness the trials of supremacy, where the galaxy's most dangerous criminals faced the legendary Mauler of Kepler 7th high above the arena floor. In the luxury viewing box reserved for the Galactic Justice, Council Administrator Quillnex flexed his forearms with satisfaction. His reptilian features bore the expression of someone anticipating a particularly enjoyable meal. "Magnificent turnout," he hissed to his aide, a nervous Tyrellian whose fur kept changing colors with anxiety. "The betting pools have reached record levels." "Yes, Administrator," the aide chittered, "though I must ask again, are you certain about including the human in today's lineup? The other condemned are hardened killers, battle-tested warriors. The human is just a terrorist," Quillnex interrupted, his vertical pupils narrowing. "One who destroyed 3 of our mining facilities and cost the consortium billions in lost revenue. The crowds want to see him die, and the Mauler will provide excellent entertainment in the process." Down in the holding cells beneath the arena, that same human sat quietly on a metal bench, seemingly unbothered by the roars and screams echoing from above as the preliminary matches concluded. Jake Morrison was an unremarkable man by human standards. Medium height, brown hair going gray at the temples, calloused hands that spoke of years of manual labor. At 42, he looked more like a tired mechanic than a galactic terrorist. His cellmate, a massive Krogan warrior named Thex, paced the confined space like a caged predator. "Human," Thex growled, his voice like grinding stone. "You seem remarkably calm for someone about to be fed to the most dangerous predator in the known galaxy." Jake looked up from the small object he'd been carving with a smuggled piece of metal. "Dangerous is relative, I suppose." "Relative," Thex's laugh was bitter. "The Mauler has killed over 200 condemned prisoners. Its hide can deflect plasma bolts. Its jaws can crush starship hulls. What could possibly be relative about that?" Jake held up his carving, a small wooden figure that looked remarkably like a simplified animal. "Back home on Terra, we had creatures called grizzly bears. 3 meters tall, half a ton of muscle and claws. Apex predators that could tear a human in half without effort. Then you understand. But we also learned something interesting about apex predators," Jake continued, tucking the carving into his pocket. "They're usually apex because they don't need to waste energy on unnecessary violence. The most dangerous bears were often the calmest ones, because they had nothing to prove." Before Thex could respond, the cell door burst open. 6 heavily armed guards escorted them toward the arena entrance, where the other condemned prisoners waited. Jake recognized the types: hardened killers, war criminals, beings whose crimes had earned them this particular death sentence. They all shared the same look of barely contained terror mixed with desperate determination. Above them, the crowd's roar intensified as Administrator Quillnex stepped up to the announcer's podium, his voice amplified throughout the massive structure. "Citizens of the galaxy," he declared, his words translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "Today we present 5 condemned criminals, each guilty of heinous crimes against civilization. They will face the Mauler in single combat. Should any survive, which none have in the past 70 years, they will earn their freedom." The arena. Floor was a circular expanse of sand and rock, dotted with primitive weapons that previous contestants had failed to use effectively. High walls surrounded the combat zone, their surfaces polished smooth to prevent climbing. At the far end, a massive gate began to grind open. The first prisoner, a cybernetically enhanced Zenthari assassin, stepped onto the sand with predatory confidence. The crowd fell silent as shadows moved behind the opening gate. Then the Mauler emerged. Even Jake, who had dealt with dangerous wildlife his entire life, felt his breath catch. The creature was magnificent and terrible, 4 meters at the shoulder, built like a cross between a tiger and a rhinoceros, with midnight black fur that seemed to absorb light. 6 legs ended in claws the size of sword blades, and its head was all jaw and teeth with eyes that held an intelligence that was both alien and uncomfortably familiar. The Zenthari made his move immediately, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to snatch up a plasma rifle from the weapon cache. The crowd cheered as he opened fire, but the energy bolt simply splashed harmlessly against the Mauler's hide. What followed was brutal and brief. The creature moved with impossible grace for something so large, closing the distance in seconds. The Zenthari's cybernetic enhancements might as well have been decorative jewelry. 3 more prisoners followed, each meeting the same fate despite their different tactics. The crowd grew increasingly bloodthirsty with each death, their various forms of cheering creating a symphony of violence. Finally, Jake's name was called. He walked onto the sand alone, ignoring the jeers and taunts from the audience. Many were, shouting variations of soft human and easy prey in their native languages. The universal translators helpfully provided him with the exact nature of their contempt. The Mauler had retreated to its end of the arena, where it sat watching him with those disturbingly intelligent eyes. Jake could see the creature analyzing him just as he was analyzing it. What he saw wasn't the mindless killing machine the crowd expected. The Mauler's posture spoke of exhaustion, not physical, but something deeper. Its magnificent coat was well maintained, its movements precise, but mechanical. This wasn't a wild predator driven by instinct. This was a prisoner just like him. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out the wooden carving he'd been working on. A simple representation of a creature not unlike the Mauler itself, but smaller, more playful. He'd based it on his memories of his daughter's pet cat back on Terra, but the basic shape was universal enough. The arena fell completely silent as he tossed the small wooden toy across the sand toward the great beast. The Mauler's massive head tilted, following the arc of the carving as it landed about halfway between them. The creature approached cautiously, lowering its great muzzle to sniff the object. Then something extraordinary happened. The Mauler began to play. It batted at the wooden figure with one enormous paw, careful not to destroy it. The movement was gentle, almost kitten-like, completely at odds with its fearsome reputation. The creature looked up at Jake, and for the first time in 70 years of combat, the Mauler made a sound that wasn't a roar. It was a purr. A deep rumbling purr that echoed through the suddenly silent arena. Jake slowly sat down cross-legged on the sand, making himself smaller and less threatening. "You're tired of this, aren't you, big guy?" he said softly, knowing the creature. Couldn't understand his words, but hoping his tone would carry the meaning. The Mauler approached, still carrying the wooden toy in its mouth. When it reached Jake, it carefully set the carving down and lowered its massive head to rest on the ground beside him. Jake reached out slowly and began scratching behind the creature's ears, just as he used to do with his own pets. The purring intensified. In the viewing box, Administrator Quillnex was speechless, his forearms trembling with rage. "Impossible," he whispered. 70 years. His aide, whose fur had gone completely white with shock, managed to find his voice. "Sir, what do we do? The crowd is confused." Indeed they were. 300,000 spectators sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they were witnessing. Some began to murmur among themselves, questioning everything they thought. They knew about the legendary Mauler. Jake continued petting the great beast, feeling the tension leave its massive frame. "They've been starving you of more than food, haven't they?" he murmured. "No contact, no companionship, nothing but violence and death. That's no way for any creature to live." The Mauler lifted its head and fixed Jake with a look of such profound gratitude that it transcended species barriers. Then, in a gesture that would be replayed on galactic news feeds for months to come, the creature gently picked up the wooden toy and placed it in Jake's hands before curling up around him like an enormous, deadly house cat. The implications rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. If the Mauler could be calmed by simple kindness, what did that say about the nature of their entertainment? What did it say about the creatures they had been using for blood sport? Administrator Quillnex was frantically shouting orders to his guards, but the damage was done. The crowd was no longer cheering for blood. Instead, they were questioning, discussing, thinking. Jake looked up at the viewing box where he could see the administrator's furious gesturing. "I think," he said to the mauler loud enough for the arena's audio pickups to catch, "that we've just ruined their whole business model." The beast purred in response as if it understood perfectly. Later, when the historians wrote about the day that changed galactic civilization's approach to criminal justice, they would focus on the political ramifications, the legal precedents, the social movements that followed.